Do you know how old premises liability laws are?
Oh, older than America. I mean, it's fun. It's uh, it's on a tort negligence system, which is rooted in common law.
It's
So it
a
is.
premises liability law in the Torah.
Oh, you were asked. You were going to tell me something. That's good. Yeah.
Welcome to Legalese. I am Matt Patton, the non-professional, and I am with my brother Mike Patton, the professional, here again to discuss legal topics and non-legal topics. Mike, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm great. I'm doing good. Well, why don't we dive right in here? Today we're going to be talking about premises liability, also known as slip and fall, trip and fall. So, Mike, if you were to describe what this area of practice is, how do you describe it?
Sure. So, slip and fall cases are kind of universally panned, I think, like in as in like everyone kind of like maybe has this collective groan when they think about it, because there's a lot of claims or a lot of attempted claims that are unsuccessful, and so business owners are kind of nervous about them, and people don't understand the law around it. But that's what we encounter: people calling and not understanding. So what I think of is a CLE I took right out of law school that was about these claims. And I wish I knew the name of the attorney, but he gave several rules to follow as a practitioner to pursue these cases. And we followed those rules for the last 14 years and had really good success in these cases. So we do pretty well at them. I like to think, and we do a good number of them. We also uh, don't take probably more of them than we do take in terms of calls, but there's a reason for that, which I'll explain. So a slip and fall in order in Kansas for a premises owner or a property owner to be liable for someone falling and getting hurt in their property, there has to be negligence on the part of the property owner. And so what that means is they have a duty that they breached and it caused injury. And that's just the basic law around it. And so one of the first things that I get, I've heard, I don't, probably 1,000 times from potential new clients is they call and they think that a business owner or a property owner should be liable just because they got hurt on their property. It's like, well,
Mm-hmm.
I got hurt there. They should pay for my medical bills. And that's not the law at all. They have to have owed you a duty of care and they have to have breached that duty causing harm. And in Kansas, they add an additional layer of protection for businesses that I think is reasonable. The business uh, has to know about a hazard or have created the hazard that caused the harm. And if they knew about or should have known or created a hazardous condition that hurts somebody, then uh, you can proceed for a negligence claim and you get your damages, which are your medical bills and then pain and suffering and any economic loss you may have suffered. So that is kind of the basics. But the other part to keep in mind is Kansas is also a comparative fault state. And what that means is a jury is going, and it's a modified comparative fault state. So a jury is going to be asked to compare the fault of the person who fell with the fault of the business owner. So that's always something you got to keep in mind because defense counsel will argue that it's open and that whatever defective condition is open and obvious. So let's use an example. So um, let's say hypothetically there's a business and there's an uneven sidewalk. So we've all encountered uneven sidewalks in the world, right? Well, let's say there's one that's about this big. And I'm not thinking of any particular case that I've tried in uh, specifically. Just it's going to take a drink of my coffee and reset. Let's say there's a defect about that big, and there was lighting that wasn't quite right. So you couldn't see it very well. So at nighttime, there was a defective condition that was open and obvious, or during the day that was open and obvious, but at night you really couldn't see it because there was no lighting, and so there was light here and light here, but not there. And then someone fell and unfortunately broke uh, an arm in this case, hypothetical
In
case,
this hypothetical case.
in this purely hypothetical case. So that is an example of uh, a good case. Um, through the course of discovery, you might learn that there was discussion of people who had fallen at this place before and they still didn't fix it. And those are the kind of facts that you look for, that they knew about the defective condition, they didn't do anything about it, and then someone got hurt. That is negligence. And not only is it negligence, it's truly not the fault of the person that fell. And so those are the things that would make a really good trip and fall case in that case in Kansas. And I love what Judge Tice said about these cases. Judge Tice is a retired uh, Shawnee Shawnee County District Court trial judge who I got to work for several years. And he said, juries are just going to decide how safe they want the world to be. And so 12 different people at any different time are going to look at things that people fell and got hurt on differently. And they get to decide, is that safe enough, or was it unreasonably unsafe? And so those are the kinds of things that you look at. And so we try not to think, um, we try to think about it in just a common sense type of way. Do we think a reasonable person would have behaved this way? And if not, uh, then we think you have negligence.
Does Kansas have special rules for hazards caused by precipitation or ice?
Oh, sure. So there's lots of case law on this, and so there's specific examples of um, of or additional rules that apply in certain circumstances. And one of those that you've alluded to is called the winter storm doctrine that applies in Kansas. So when a winter storm is ongoing, uh, the courts essentially have said, we're just businesses. It don't have to actively make safe walkways and entryways during an active winter storm. But they do businesses do have to make safe walkways within a reasonable amount of time afterwards, and that is up to a jury. How much is a reasonable amount of time? And that's something that we discuss with insurance companies and opposing counsel frequently. So, so that's an example of an exception doctrine, the winter storm doctrine. There's also something called the slight defect rule, where uh, the courts don't say what a slight defect, but it's a defense available for sidewalks. It's a slight defect. Um, I was just at the Topeka Zoo, and they have shaved off every uneven surface in the whole place, which I thought was interesting. That they were obviously going through and making sure that all of these sidewalks were even, but they would be covered potentially for some of that under the slight defect rule. They don't define what a slight defect is in the case law, but uh, goes back to a jury just gets to decide. How
Yeah.
safe, how unreasonable is it this much? Is it this much? I don't know.
Okay. So let's say you're talking to a business owner who has been frustrated by these. They've seen a lot of them and they feel victimized by this area of the law. Um, Certainly, in a conversation like that, you wouldn't want to dismiss their concerns or
Mm-mm. Yeah,
downplay them. But how would you engage in that kind of conversation where somebody's? I mean, there's a lot of people. There was a guy who came to one of my Bible studies who found out we did personal injury law, that I worked for a personal injury firm, and he got mad at me. So yeah, how do you navigate those kinds of conversations?
sure. Well, uh, usually I navigate those conversations by being self-deprecating, uh, just on a personal level. Uh, but uh, but in terms of how I think about that from a perspective, if I was giving advice to a business owner, I would say make every effort to be reasonable, and most business owners are doing that. But then also uh, use video surveillance and make sure that if someone falls, then you have a record of it so that if they're saying something that's not true, you can prove it. And I have personally seen that video evidence go both ways in cases where it is very good for the plaintiff. And I've seen cases where it's very good for the premises owner. So I think having objective evidence where we don't have to rely on the memories or subjective opinions of witnesses is the best protection for really everybody involved. Uh, so so that would be my advice to a business owner. And then in terms of uh, a discussion of are these cases is it a good for society to have these, or is it onerous for businesses? I would say one, it's like, well, that is what insurance is for, and you should insure your properties. Two, uh, we have a system where if someone is hurt due to the negligence of someone else, then they're responsible for it. And we have a system that does that with due process. And I think that's ultimately a very good thing. And it is one that uh, doesn't get it right every time. And not every personal injury attorney is going to balance these things well. And not every state is balanced as well as Kansas is. And, I would say there's enough defenses. Kansas is relatively business friendly. Uh, so, so I would also say there's a negativity bias in the media. So when there's an unreasonable case that gets a big jury verdict, you hear about it. So everyone talks about the McDonald's hot coffee case. And 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 even when you go into the details of that case, it's not as unreasonable as it sounds. Um, but that's an outlier situation where a jury comes in with a huge verdict on this, and so the media reports it because it's unique and interesting. But what you don't hear about is the juries that award uh, just the medical bills and $2,000, and they think they've done them a favor. So both of those things exist, and truly, that is the reason why we negotiate settlements because the insurance company wants to avoid that runaway jury, and my clients want to avoid the jury that is just conservative with with uh, with awards. So yeah, I understand the alternative viewpoint, but uh, when you have represented individuals who have had their lives upended by a serious injury that happened because it was not their fault. And you're able to get their lost wages covered. You're able to get these medical bills that they had no idea how they were going to pay. And you can set their life right through that. That's justice. And I believe in that.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah. Do you know how old premises liability laws are?
oh, older than America. I mean, it's fun. It's it's on a tort negligence system, which is rooted in common law.
There's
So it
a
is.
premises liability law in the Torah.
Oh, you were asked. You were going to tell me something. That's good. Yeah. Tell me.
Deuteronomy. They you have to have parapets on their roofs because people spend a lot of time on roofs because they were cooler. And if you didn't have a parapet and somebody fell off, you could be held responsible for the injuries. So
And what were the damages if someone fell off a parapet on your roof?
I don't
And
remember,
I
which is
remember
probably a
there.
good thing.
Yeah, it is very true that Deuteronomy has a whole civil justice system written in it, where it's like, well, if this happens, then you get this, and it writes out the compensation system, which is fascinating.
Hmm.
And so those kinds of laws, uh, what I think my takeaway is God cares about that kind of justice too. He put it in his law books,
Yep.
and so that is important.
Um, okay. Well, that's I think that's plenty on premises liability. So why don't we move on, Mike? What are you noticing? What are you paying attention to this week?
What do I want to talk about? I really want to talk about Greenland and tariffs today.
Greenland tariffs.
Definitely
Oh,
not. I don't want to talk about that at all.
no, me neither. I'm tired of seeing news articles about tariffs. Like, oof.
Yeah. The- you know, so we're going to talk about something else. I'm going to talk about a book I read that you read also probably 20 years ago, and that is Tipping Point.
Mm.
Uh, Malcolm Gladwell, great book, highly recommended. I don't know why I'm doing a promo for Malcolm Gladwell's book. He just did an anniversary edition, so check it out.
Well, he edited out a bunch of stuff, I think, or made a bunch of changes.
Did he? I'll have to go check out what changes he made. That would be interesting, what he doesn't think is interesting now. But there's a story in that book that I thought was fascinating, and I think about it all the time. It was the story of the Good Samaritan. And we all know the story of the Good Samaritan is the religious leaders passed by the hurt person on the side of the road. They didn't help him. Um, but then a Samaritan who's like a an outsider, or someone who wouldn't want to be around a Jewish person at the time, or would have been looked down upon. He's the one that helps the injured traveler on the side of the road. And so Princeton did a study on that with seminary students, and you can help me with uh, the facts of the situation. But some seminary students were told uh, they could preach on anything. Some students were told they are to preach on the Good Samaritan, um, and they set up a fake Good Samaritan situation to see who would stop and help and who wouldn't. And the vast majority of seminarians did not stop and help. And it didn't matter whether or not they were teaching on uh, on the Good Samaritan passage or not. And that you can say what mattered more.
Yeah,
Uh,
it mattered if they were late
yeah.
or
So,
they've had a crunch time. So if they had plenty of time, oh, I'll stop. But if you're, running slow on time, the thing that I was curious about a lot of things because that's a fascinating study. But one variable, how do you control for how good of an actor the person who's pretending to be hurt is?
oh, that is interesting. It's like, you just,
What's that scene
I've,
from Family Guy where he's just holding his knee?
I've
Uh,
never thought about that, where Like maybe some of the participants just thought it was a weird, dramatic college student just being weird on the side of the road. Like, I'm not helping that person because they're not hurt. Yeah, that
Um,
that that is interesting. But yeah, like you said, what mattered most for that group of seminary students was whether or not they were told they had plenty of time or whether they were told they were late. And so the people with plenty of time were more likely to help than the people uh, who were told they were late. So,
mhm,
so you had an interesting takeaway on that. You always said when we've talked about this is uh, you're much more interested in the percentage of people who did stop to help. Like you want to know about the hurried student
mhm,
who stopped to help. Like who is
mhm.
that person?
Yeah, because
And
it wasn't just one, it was a slim percentage, but there
yeah,
was a slim percentage of people who were late and still stopped.
yeah,
And that's a really interesting question. Um, what is it about those people that led them to stop when they were late?
who is this good minority who it doesn't matter what they're preaching on, doesn't matter if they're running late, they're going to stop and help someone if they need help.
Hmm.
And 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 the story doesn't tell you anything about, or the study, as told by Malcolm Gladwell, doesn't tell you how to be a better person. It says try not to be late. I don't know what the takeaway is.
Yeah.
I have some thoughts on that. Like the takeaway might be, uh, you should build into your uh, schedule the ability to be mindful about what's going on. So
Hmm.
you're not so rushed all the time that you're just focused on these things. So you miss what is more important in the moment because we're all prioritizing things all the time. Like, I'm going to focus on this, I'm going to focus on this. But if you're aware or mindful, you can make a better choice.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key. And you know, if you have any tips on how to be more mindful, I'll take them.
How to be more mindful. Honestly, that's a really hard practice. I don't know that I do have any tips on how to be more mindful. I
Well,
wish I
that's
did.
all we got, folks.
We'll ask our dad. He's actually pretty good at being mindful.
Making the right choice
Intensive.
in the right moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
we'll come back with that answer next week. But um, yeah, it is just curious to me what, to think about that. What is it about? How do we do that? I do think when we think about that today, we tend to think about homelessness almost automatically because that's such a common experience. Um, but I think, you know, Jesus gives this very specific, and he does this often. He gives this very specific example of a moral action, but that actually, um, he gives a picture of the kind of person, uh, what a person with character would do in this particular situation. But then when we're trying to live out our lives, we have more, it gets more confusing. There was a time when I was driving with a friend of mine who is a better man than I, and there was somebody stuck on the side of the road. And so he said, "Hey, let's go help that guy." So I was like, "All right." So we went and helped him, and it was a guy who was between houses, and he was on hard times. So I, tried to help him out, got his number, stayed in contact with him for a long time, and man, many hours, many conversations, a lot of money later, and job applications, and he was probably in a worse situation than when I met him. Um, and that was an experience that helped me realize that um, walking with people in a long journey is hard and beyond my capacity, you know, as an individual, to really bring meaningful assistance to somebody. Um, and so it makes me grateful for a lot of the institutions that we do have, that exist. Topeka Rescue Mission. There's a place that just opened up in the Kansas City area called Eden Village, that is housing people long term, and I think it's doing a fantastic job building. It does tiny homes, and so yeah, I think
And they're willing to make the long-term investment in people, and and finding ways to participate in those institutional uh, things. I think is
yeah.
really good to do. I would end with this thought: the in Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, Covey steals from Viktor Frankl and says, there's a space between stimulus and response. And in that space, there's a choice. And, and we have to be aware that there's a choice there. And if we're not aware that there's a choice, then just our emotional state of the day will rule. And, and that life is constantly bringing me back to try to be aware of that. So
Hmm.
that would be my ending thought on all of this.
That's good.
Um, so
Well,
well,
thanks for
thanks.
hanging out with us, and we'll see you next week for Legalese.
I don't know why I always end it with a thumbs up, but